Hi, good evening to everyone. Thanks for joining me. And today I continue with my education around COVID and the COVID storm. This is an acronym that I have created for spike triggered autoimmune response mechanism. It's actually a very, very important concept. And the reason why I'm highlighting it is because a lot of people are ignoring this possibility. Very few people seem to be interested in COVID at the moment. I seem to be one of those voices who continues to talk about COVID. The reason is very simple. I don't think it's over because the science tells me so. Now, I have already been through the process of saying things that people don't necessarily understand or agree with when I spoke about autoimmunity in COVID way back in 2020. It took almost 2 years before people started to grasp it. In the same way, I know I'm ahead of the curve. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, you really need to listen to these conversations. So today I'm talking about whooping cough. Why am I referring to whooping cough? Because it's surging. Nobody seems to know why. So I'll come to this article and I'll explain what's going on in just a few minutes so that you have the understanding as well about what is happening. Before we start, as usual, I want to remind you, make sure you click on the subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and if you're following anywhere else, please join this scientific education. Now, additionally, we have in place for you, are you prepared for disease X? Believe me, as far as I'm concerned, disease X is technically still going to be COVID. It's just inconvenient. Now, what you will get, because we're preparing this book and we're doing a Kickstarter, as part of our promotion, what we have done is we've put together something called Capital COVID Conversations. And this is from Ron Johnson's work in the Senate of the USA, where he pulled together experts from all over the USA and the world to talk about some of the inconsistencies with the science. If you join our newsletter, you will also get this here. It's just a breakdown. And you know what's valuable about it? It helps you to have information at your fingertips that can just discount all the people who usually ignore what you're concerned about, because it has all of the experts in it. This was from February 28, 2024. They pulled all these experts together and discussed the science. And what we have done here is we've broken it down into simple, easy to understand information. The one I wanted to highlight today, this is Robert Malone, what he said, but we've pulled together, say, for instance, what Edward Dowd said. He was a former senior investment advisor at BlackRock. And what he was focused on was the significant change in excess deaths that were occurring, up to 1.1 million excess deaths between 2021 and 2023. All of this information at your fingertips, really valuable to know. And so we've collated it in a way that makes it easy for you to understand. So please click on the links below. And additionally, the other link today is about the storm protection. I keep on referring to COVID storm. What do you do? Click on the links below, join us in this scientific discovery, and see where it goes. Let's stay ahead of the curve. So, getting back to this whooping cough story, what is this about? So, the first thing is just to remind you just a little bit about the science about whooping cough. So, this is from the CDC. This is just their highlights. This was done in April 2024. So, it's whooping cough, also known as pertussis. When you think of the DPT, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, and that's the vaccine that almost everybody had. It's very contagious respiratory illness, maybe like a common cold, but the coughing can last for weeks or months. And it's whooping cough because you have such a bad cough. And it's caused by a bacteria called Bordella pertussis, only found in humans. And it attaches in the respiratory system and releases specific toxins that cause your cilia not to be able to sweep so well. And so these are all the risk factors. Babies are oftentimes at risk, younger than 1 year old, because they haven't been exposed, and people with immunocompromising conditions, as well as asthma. Now, this is important, and I'm highlighting this here because this is what I think is the connection that we'll come around to in just a second. Easily spread with coughing, sneezing, and you can spread it to other people around, and you can be contagious for weeks. So that's the science around what has been happening with whooping cough. So, whooping cough is there and it's always been there, and there are cases all the time. So, why am I talking about it now? Well, this is because of a headline that I came across. As usually, I'm trying to find all the latest headlines for you so that you know what's going on. This is from New Brunswick, Global News. They declare a whooping cough outbreak across the entire province. New Brunswick is in Canada. And what they had here is that I'll just let them give the summary here. So listen to what they had to say about this outbreak.
Angel Dixon has two young children, aged 3 and 7. But this year, on top of school supplies and new shoes, she'll have one more thing on her mind: whooping cough.
She's a smaller school, so I'm not too concerned about a lot of exposure, I guess. But we'll just take precautions, I guess, every day.
As of August 22nd, the province has recorded 141 cases this year. The 5-year provincial average is 34 cases per year. New Brunswick isn't alone. There have been over 150 cases in eastern Newfoundland, 470 in Ontario, and thousands of cases in Quebec. New Brunswick's Chief Medical Officer of Health isn't surprised. He says the disease, also known as pertussis, tends to become more active every 5 to 7 years.
We've had a lot of activity close to us, and knowing that our last provincial outbreak dates back to 2012, we knew that we were potentially going to see some increased activity here as well.
For young children and babies...
I'll pause it here and just make the point, because what he was saying there is that, no big deal. They expect a few outbreaks that would occur. It's about the right time in a few years. It's not a problem. And when you look at what's happening across Canada here, is that you can see there's New Brunswick. This is August. Then Ontario, this was in July. And then as you go down, this was in June in Peterborough area. And this is all in Canada, Ontario again. Quebec, this was in June. This has been going on for some time, and it seems to be getting more and more significant. But is it just a Canada problem? So that was my question, is this just Canada? Or based on my approach to what is happening, I am looking for COVID all the time. And I'm looking for how COVID impacts on diseases that we had all the time before us. If you don't get this, this is so important for people to understand. COVID is not just a simple viral infection. So in effect, COVID represents, technically, when it's spreading widely across the population, it's technically an immunosuppressant. And this is what people are not getting. They're saying, yeah, it's mild, it's no problem. You don't realize that technically every time you are immune suppressing your immune system, that is what is happening. And this is why it's so serious. And it's just being glossed over by everybody because either they don't understand it, or maybe they don't want to worry people too much about it. COVID is in the past, they are told. But let's look and see if this is an international problem. So what I did straight away is I then went and looked. This is the UK. Confirmed cases of pertussis in England by month. And so this was updated the 8th of August 2024. I'm not going to go through all of this reading, but I just want to show you the graph. This is what is happening in 2024 here. Now you have to remember, 2018 is in blue, 2019 is in orange, 2020 is in green, 2021 is in brown. Goodness gracious, look at what is happening in 2024. This is not normal. So this is happening in the UK, this is happening in Canada, and I would bet you that this is also happening across multiple countries that are highly vaccinated. This is a piece of the puzzle that nobody wants to talk about because it's inconvenient. But there's a reason why I think that this is occurring. You see, as usual, there is an elephant in the room that nobody wants to acknowledge. Everybody's baffled. This huge elephant is just sitting there, yet nobody quite knows what in the world is going on. It makes no sense. This is the most important piece of the puzzle that we need to understand. So let me explain what the science is around this, because there's got to be a reason why we're seeing these cases rising in different parts of the world at the same time. It's doing a similar thing like what happened with monkeypox. Is that a coincidence? Well, I don't believe in coincidences. So I look for the science. So here is how it works. Bordella pertussis, like a few other bacteria, not all bacteria, almost all viruses do this or need this. But when you have a SARS-CoV-2 infection, or let me rephrase that, when you have a viral infection, normally your cell that's infected, every cell has the capability of producing interferon, releases it, and it warns other cells. So they put up barriers. Infected cells die, immune system comes in. And this is how the body fights infection. Interferon is your most important early warning signal. This is what signals to the body, especially the mucosal airway, that there is infection around, and it responds immediately to try and clear it up. The problem with SARS-CoV-2 is that it is exceptionally good at suppressing interferon. This is why it can go undetected. And so this is what technically happens. You get infected with COVID, it blocks the interferon, and so therefore these signals don't happen. And when these signals don't happen, guess what happens? The infectious agent is then able to continue to replicate because there is no early warning signal. That's the first phase. So you may think to yourself, well, why am I highlighting vaccinated regions? And it's largely because of IgG4. I won't go into it now, but essentially, IgG4 means that the immune system in these highly vaccinated regions is more permissive to SARS-CoV-2 infection. This is why the infection appears milder. This is what people are not getting. They're thinking it's no problem because it's mild. I warn you, HIV is mild as well. In the first 4 weeks, mild symptoms. Does it mean it's a mild disease? No. The point is that the mechanism of interferon suppression and IgG4 makes the symptoms subtle. So technically, what we're dealing with is an immune suppressed population. Here's the other piece of the puzzle. This is the other scientific piece. Now, when it comes to how your immune system responds, I usually use this as my COVID immune team with the macrophages, the tanks, neutrophils, these are the foot soldiers. T cells are like your Air Force, missiles are the plasma cells, antibodies, and natural killer cells, that's your Navy. Mast cells are on their own. But again, what people don't realize is that this virus, let me make this clear to you. Before I make the point, people keep on thinking this is a typical coronavirus. This is a beast of a virus. This virus has capabilities beyond anything I have ever seen from any other virus. This thing is probably almost better than HIV. That is how remarkable this virus is. And guess what? It does stuff similar because it uses an entry receptor called CD147. This is also an entry receptor used by other viruses, the HIV virus. So what it does when you have what you think is a mild infection is that it is taking out these immune cells, T cells, B cells, natural killer cells. So the sequence is likely to be two things: interferon suppression, removal, or lymphopenia. So if you looked at the blood count of many of these people, I would bet that we would see that they're lymphopenic. That means their lymphocyte count is down. And if you were to break it down in detail, you would find that they have low levels of their CD4 T cells, they have low levels of their natural killer cells, they have low levels of their CD8 cells. So when you put that together with another viral infection, that's why we're getting what we call co-infections. Normally, very rarely do you get a co-infection where you have two viruses infecting the person at the same time. Talking like 1.4% of cases used to be in that category. Now, because COVID is suppressing your immune system, you can then have COVID plus a viral infection plus a bacterial infection. And there are some bacteria that are especially responsive to interferon, for which whooping cough is one of them. Streptococcus is another one. So I expect that we're going to see rheumatic fever making a rise even in highly developed countries, because that's just what the science tells you. If you suppress your immune system, you are more at risk for infection. Now, this may be inconvenient news. It may not be necessarily what people want to hear, but this is science. And for some reason, nobody is talking about it. It's like COVID is gone. And COVID is surging again. It is spreading everywhere. It's immune suppressing the population. Nobody cares. So, what is it that is going to happen this winter? It's likely to be a disaster. That's the reality. That's the truth. Now, I may be wrong, but the science predicts that this is going to be right. And it's very, very worrying. What we need to address is don't get caught up with those people who will tell you that there is no big deal. COVID is a nothing burger. Now, as I said before, you can take that approach, but we have never seen a virus behave in this way as this one has done since 2020. Every summer, everybody thought this was over. Summer of 2020, summer of 2021, summer of 2022, summer of 2023, now the summer of 2024. It's over? No. Watch and see what happens in the winter. This is not over because of the science. The reality is, in highly vaccinated regions, they're unable to control the circulation of the virus because you need a very broad immune response to deal with the variants. At the moment, in highly vaccinated regions, their immune system is still too focused on the original virus, which is the Wuhan variant, and it just can't see the Omicron variants, and they just keep on coming one after the other after the other. This is quite serious, not to be discounted, and I'm hoping that my listeners will be much more savvy and recognize the challenges that we have in front of us. So, again, just a reminder so that you keep up to date. If you're interested in what I'm telling you about with COVID Storm and what you can do, click on the link in the description below. And additionally, join us with regards to Capital COVID-19 conversations. You'll be able to get this here, and you will be then well educated on the latest information that's out there around the pandemic. We have a long way to go, sadly. And similar to what I have been listening to with Gert, I expect this to be a rough ride. I wouldn't mind being wrong, but all the indicators that I've seen so far are showing us that this is going to be a challenging few years ahead of us. Thank you.